There has been a plane crash at Havana's airport, and there appears to have been a fireball soon after takeoff. We're hearing that news from our Patrick Oppmann, who is on the ground in Havana. We'll go to him in just a moment, but first to Peter Goals, who joins me now on the phone. You're an aviation expert. We're hearing this plane crash took off soon, broke up or fell out of the sky, exploded. It's unclear exactly what happened, but very soon after takeoff. What are your thoughts and your expertise at this moment?
Well, this is. It appears to be an aircraft out of the low cost or even below low cost air carrier Blue Panorama.
I just want to interrupt you there, sir. That was some information that came out from the Cubans. That is, I think, being retracted, and this was a Cubana flight from the latest wires that I've been seeing. But either way, it was a Boeing 737, I understand.
Cubana, yeah. Well, yeah. If it's Cubana, then the government of Cuba is going to be pressed hard to figure out exactly what happened. If it was the 737, it was undoubtedly older because the Cubans have not been buying any newer aircraft. They will check very carefully on the maintenance of this aircraft and see whether it had met the standards. And, you know, there's been a challenge sometimes in aviation in Cuba when they were flying primarily Russian aircraft. They have particularly poor flight records, flight safety records. And in this case, you look at weather, you look at the pilots, and unfortunately in this day and age, you look also at terrorism.
Okay, so stand by for me, Peter. I do want to go to our correspondent who is in Havana, Patrick Oppmann. What are you hearing? What's the latest? Patrick, I know that from where you're standing at that Havana bureau, you can often see planes take off and land from that airport. What are people saying? What did they see?
Well, there's a lot of shock here, as you can imagine, and we've finally gotten some more information, Robin, from the government. So let's just go to that. This is coming from Granma, the official newspaper here of the Communist Party, and they say, I'm quoting, at 12:08 hours today, a little after noon, a Boeing 737-200 rented from Cubana de Aviación, this is Cuba's main airline here, with a foreign crew and 104 passengers on board that was going from Havana to Holguin in eastern Cuba. The flight number is DMJ 0972. As it was taking off from the airport here in Havana, Jose Marti, that is when it crashed, and rescue crews, search and rescue crews, are now in the crash area, and we've not heard any kind of assessment yet, Robin, on if there are any survivors, if there are any dead. At this point, there has not been any word on how these 104 passengers on board fared in this really terrible crash. The images we have seen, the descriptions we have heard from people in the area talk about a large fireball and thick black smoke. But once again, 104 people on this plane rented from Cubana Airlines, a Cubana Airlines flight, a Boeing 737-200 that was leaving from Havana as it was going to the eastern end of the island. It apparently crashed upon takeoff, and we were waiting for word on just how bad this very serious crash is.
And do we know how the airport authorities, how firefighters are dealing with the situation on the ground right now?
You know, they have firefighters at the airport. Cuban authorities have said for years that they are ready for this kind of incident. American Airlines studied very closely the capabilities that Cuban authorities have when they, just over a year ago, reestablished flight service for the first time in 50 years between the U.S. and Cuba. And there were doubters in the U.S. who said that perhaps Cuba didn't have the kind of equipment, the capabilities that you have in other parts of the world. Those capabilities are certainly being tested today, and many will probably go back after the fact and study how the Cuban authorities dealt with this. From the pictures, it's a very large plume of smoke. You hear passengers talk about seeing a fireball, and it's really a question of how much could firefighters do it all in this kind of situation. But we know that they are still in the area, and we're waiting to get some word back on fatalities involved. It seems quite a serious crash here, and but we just have to wait and hear from the Cuban officials who are being put to the test today. This is, in 6 years of living here, I've never seen a crash quite like this one, and it will be something that Cuban authorities will have to account for exactly how this took place, Robin.
Okay, thank you so much. And just I want to bring up some pictures here. I think we're seeing some of the first video that is coming through. I don't know if this is what we're seeing here, that you can see some plumes of smoke. It's clearly from far away. Someone zooming in with their cell phone. Just take a look there. Either way, Patrick, you probably can't see these images. They're shaky of the situation, and there is smoke from the airport, but it's difficult to assess really what we're seeing.
And the images that I've seen were taken from the terminal, so it gives you a sense of how close this happened to the airport and how frightening it must have been for the hundreds, if not thousands, of passengers in the 3 terminals that make up the Havana airport. So not just for the poor people who are aboard this plane, but for the people who are in the airport, a very frightening scene. And of course, what caused this crash, we still don't know if it was a technical problem. Terrorism has been mentioned, but that's something the Cuban authorities take very seriously. And of course, people will be looking at the fact that this was a Cubana airliner, an airliner that has been plagued by technical difficulties and maintenance problems over the years.